Joining us now is Martin Armstrong, former head of Princeton Economics International. Martin, I have so many questions for you today, but right out of the gate, what about what is happening in the United States right now with investors beginning to question the U.S. financial system, the stability of it here?
Yeah, I mean, they've been moving money dramatically from New York. You don't want your money at a place that's trading right now. This has got to be sorted out. I mean, what I would do, write to your bank or your broker and you say, listen, I want a guarantee in writing you will not take my money, post it in repo, use it for collateral for any third party whatsoever. And if they're not willing to sign that and stop this nonsense, then go someplace else. But the way it's been has been that the problem exists is that we have the regulators have known about this for a long time. You open an account, it's presumed they can do this with your money. In the account papers, it is not. There is no place that tells you that. They do not have the legal title to the money. So it's ridiculous, completely ridiculous. And then a New York branch posts your collateral in London. In London, they have to have a title, and they say, oh, well, we have it from our U.S. branch. And that's how they're bouncing back and forth. But the U.S. branch doesn't have a signed agreement from every individual. So I would be very, very concerned. And this judge, Martin Glenn, is the very judge that was in my case. He defended Republic National Bank to the hilt. That forced me to go to the Japanese press. And then I had to tell them, please, you come here to the United States to file suit because he refused to sue any banks. And only because the Japanese filed the suits in the United States, was I able to circumvent him. Otherwise, he would never have allowed any suit whatsoever against the bank.
As listeners globally hear this, Martin, it's not going to be very comforting to them.
It's the way New York is run. I mean, Martin Glenn is the one who argued in the Court of Appeals and said, listen, judges, you have this inherent power from, I guess, Henry VIII to imprison anybody without any time limitation whatsoever until they die. No trial, no lawyers, nothing. This was his idea. He sold it to the judges, and they did it. So, in that sense, I think he was basically rewarded for protecting the banks by giving him the judgeship. Now he's in there for life. But he plays ball. I mean, he should be going after the banks. If they accepted basically stolen money, they have to return it. And the depositors should not be having to pony up this money.
But it sounds like, Martin, you're saying this judge was chosen because he will protect the banks.
Of course. I mean, of all the judges you get, come on. And then the trustee has represented J.P. Morgan. And depositors have asked for his recusal. He refuses. He says, well, what they paid me wasn't a huge percentage of what I made. It doesn't work that way. If you ever represented them, you cannot now go against them. I mean, it's just, anybody in the legal profession will tell you that. It's a conflict of interest. And unfortunately, in New York, they don't care about conflicts of interest. They just do what they want to do all the time. They're taking down not only the country, but they're taking down the entire world financial system. I mean, this is nuts.
But people are asking you, is our money safe in the United States, international people and people inside the U.S.?
At the conference that I just gave, December 3rd and 4th, I mean, one of the number one questions people are asking, but what happens now with this MF Global stuff? And I don't know what to tell them. I cannot in good conscience say your money's safe in New York anymore. And we were looking at largely where to put your money. I really had to say, well, move to London, move your accounts to London or Canada. But I just can't, in all good conscience, tell people that don't worry, your money's going to be safe in New York, because it's just not. The judges will not straighten this out. The regulators are all on the take, and it's a disaster. You have the head of the CFTC recuses himself. He says, because I was at Goldman Sachs with Corzine. So who's he handed to? Summers, who was what? She was basically worked for the CME. So if now she's in charge, why did the CME not audit? Why did the CME not come up with money immediately? I mean, come on. That's her former employer. The conflicts of interest are just so abundant in this case. It's pathetic. It really is pathetic.
Let's tie in that email you've received, that communication, Martin. What about that for the listeners globally?
Well, largely because of my comments on this subject, I've an email saying that the CME is now considering ponying up, quote unquote, $550 million to help with the investors to bring them back up to at least about an 88% level instead of the 70% level from the court.
And that email was from the CME?
Yeah.
How do you see that situation playing out then, Martin?
I mean, legally, the way it would be, the CME should probably bring it up to 100%. They probably don't have the money. And then they become the creditor against the banks. But the banks should be giving back all the money that they took from MF Global. I mean, come on, they know what the deal is. They know it was clients' assets. They all do it. So I think the CME is between a rock and a hard place, but if they don't do something, you're talking about the entire U.S. financial system is something equivalent to some third world entity.
And why this communication from the CME to you? They had concerns about your presentation?
Yeah, I mean, look, we are probably, apparently our influence is still very huge, and there were some members that came to the conference. I mean, our conference, we had people there. We had to turn away. That's how bad the economy has become. I will probably do one now in San Francisco. It looks like Berlin, Abu Dhabi, and Bangkok. I mean, we're just absolutely inundated with requests from around the world. You know, stood up for 2 days to do it. I guess I'm going to have to just get back to the top of my game to do this stuff. But it's just crazy. What's going on around the world, everybody is really concerned at practically every which level. And now we have MF Global, which is bringing into question the validity of the U.S. financial system.
And at the presentation with the CME members present, you were telling the audience that your money is not safe in the United States.
Everybody was asking, you know, we have a fairly sophisticated, probably the most sophisticated audience of anywhere. Half the audience, at least, was from overseas. And people flew in from Pakistan to all the way down to South Africa. So our conferences tend to be very well attended and like mini UNs. So the question was, is money safe in the United States? And the response was, listen, unless you get some sort of written authority from whoever you're dealing with that they're not going to engage in this kind of activity, I don't know what to tell you. I mean, you're going to have to go to some other place where it's not allowed. I mean, at least in London, they have to have a signed agreement. They don't in New York.
So is money safe in the U.S., Martin?
Given the corruption in the legal system, the regulators, we have, almost 10 regulators on the mortgage-backed securities, and not one of them did anything. You know, we are so over-regulated, it's nuts. People will say, oh, well, we don't have enough regulations because it happened. No, the answer should be you get rid of the 10 regulators, just have one, and make sure it does its job. I mean, the SEC, CFTC, they've never prevented a single thing. Nothing. Madoff, MF Global, you name it, they haven't done it. So I don't know what we're paying these people for. There's certainly regulations are not there. Corzine, I know from inside source at the SEC, there were going to be rules to prevent them from doing exactly what they're doing. Corzine went down, met with Mary Shapiro. She personally revoked it. That's the information I have from inside the SEC. So the whole thing's a joke. When I speak to people on the Hill, they even say the SEC is bought and paid for. And that, if they ask them for documentation, whatever, they resist. Just like the Fed resisted opening his books to Ron Paul. I mean, these are unelected government agencies. They do not play ball with the elected side of government. It's a contentious relationship. This is not one government, and we, should understand what the structure really is. These people are not elected by the people of the United States. They're simply appointed. That's it. They are not accountable to us. They don't have to stand up for election, and that's the way it is. So, my opinion, in UK, they have one regulator. That's what we need. One regulator, and over there, they're at least afraid of it. Over here, nobody's afraid of it. It's the truth. They got the FSA in London. I mean, on the Buffett manipulation of silver back in '98, the reason he came out and said, all right, it's me, I bought $1 billion. Why? Because the Bank of England ordered all silver brokers to show up the next morning. He came out and, all right, it's me. I'm not manipulating markets. Yeah, I bought $1 billion worth of silver in London. All right? It's a long-term investment. That just will not happen in the United States. CFTC is not going to call them all in and say who your client is. Buffett was trading silver with them in 1993 at Fibro. The CFTC walked into Fibro, said, we want to know who your client is. They said, we're not telling you. They said, okay, fine. Exit the trade, walked out the door. That's what you got. We have no regulators in this country.
Martin Armstrong, former head of Princeton Economics.